Hi, Amber. Thank you so much for coming on to Everyday Endorphins. It is so wonderful having you here.
Thank you for having me.
I am really excited to talk about your upcoming memoir, Loveable, today, and to really dive into some of the topics that are central to the book and to your story. But before we dive into all of that, I would love for you to share a little bit with my listeners about your journey and kind of your story, your trajectory from being in the corporate space to then pivoting into entrepreneurship and coaching and speaking and all of the amazing things that you do today. Because I think that you have a really unique career path. And I would love to hear how you came into what you're doing now and becoming a writer.
Yeah, it was entirely accidental. I'll say that. I never thought, oh, I want to be an author one day. I want to speak on stages. I don't even know if I could have imagined that possibility. But what always drove me was following curiosity. And so curiosity originally took me, I worked for Apple throughout college and was very into building computers as a kid. And I had an online magazine when I was 11. I was just kind of really into both spreading ideas and sharing information, but how technology was made. So that took me to Silicon Valley and I worked with several startups, and I was in really like the startup heyday. Twitter had 6 employees and was next door to me. I was working at a company that was kind of like Facebook for the enterprise. I was looking to make a career move, interviewing with Facebook and Google, and just have this gnawing feeling of kind of this is not what I thought this was going to be. And this might not be my life, even though I had this imagination of what tech in Silicon Valley would be. I found myself a little disappointed or even heartbroken by the disconnect I felt around what technology could be and what some of the leadership, like where it was going. And so, I kind of impulsively, but very also intuitively, I had this gnawing sensation that like I needed to leave San Francisco for whatever reason and move to New York. And I could not shake this like, it's time to go. You have to go to New York. You have to go to New York. And I had never been to New York. And I did not know why I needed to go to New York, but I knew that the voice was very clear. And so I thought about it for some time, and finally I had a conversation with a friend. His name's Amit Gupta. He had a startup called Photo Jojo, and he was like creating this online community for photographers. But I sat in front of him and I was like, I had this call to go to New York. I have to go. And he's like, okay, so go tomorrow. And I was like, well, that's crazy. I have a job. And he's like, quit. And I was like, but I don't really have that much savings. He's like, great, it's a better story. And I was like, yeah, but like, I don't really know anyone there. He's like, I have some friends, I'll introduce you. And just like every reason to not go, he challenged. And so after that conversation, I booked a flight 48 hours later. I put in my notice and basically quit my job, sold my belongings, and moved from San Francisco to New York in 48 hours.
So that's incredibly courageous. Like, let's just pause there. Do you reflect back on that time and think to yourself, what was I thinking? Like, what actually really compelled me to be so bold and within 48 hours move across the country? Like, clearly it worked out. So now in hindsight, like maybe you can look back and be like, okay, that was the right choice. But making a big leap of faith like that takes a lot of inner trust. How did you come back to that intuition and know like this was the right choice for you to make?
When I was making the decision, I felt an enormous sense of relief, an enormous sense of like, there was a peacefulness that like took over that had me know, oh, this is right. The panic, the anxiety, the fear, the like questioning was when I was in it, when I was like at this job and company that perhaps wasn't right for me, when I was interviewing with Facebook and I like felt the tension in my chest and like my shoulders caving in and having like, I was like, this is what I should do, what looks good on paper, what will make me appear successful to others. But my body was like, hell no, this is not for you. And the scariest part was that I didn't actually know what was right for me. I only at that point had clarity. I was like, what wasn't the right fit? And so, I think the harder part was when I was in the questioning, but when I made that decision, there was a sense of ease that took over from that point forward. There was just like, it was like my knowing and my self trust and like something I mean, something took over, and that just, it was like I had never, at that moment in my life, I was, I don't know, 23 years old. I had never yet felt so free.
Wow. That's a really interesting point because we are often pulled in so many directions because we feel like we should be doing something or another thing. And the more that we listen to the should, the further we stray away from like what we actually want to do and what we know to be is right for us. It's so easy to get caught up in what we think we should be doing or what we think other people think we should be doing. And, you bring up a good point about once you make the decision, feeling a sense of ease and calmness as like a metric of success for following what feels right. Because when we live in flow, it's like there's less of that reactivity. Like the things that are right for us don't actually feel as like cumbersome or anxiety inducing. But oftentimes, the choice that we have to make to get towards the right decision, like the build up to that is very anxiety inducing. Like it gives us those feelings of fear. So it's like once you make the choice that's aligned with you, the fear kind of disseminates, it dissolves a bit.
Yeah. I remember I had read at the time, I was reading The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And she talks about Joseph Campbell, she mentions in the book, and how when you align with your right path, there will be 1,000 helping hands. And I remember being like, that sounds nice in theory.
Yeah.
But I actually really found that to be true of as soon as I made that choice, here this person who was a stranger, the person who I was meeting him for the first time when he said, go, go, go. I have friends. I'll introduce you. And he did. He made 3 key introductions for me that ended up like opening so many doors in New York. And it was like one thing started clicking after another. And it really felt like, oh, I am now in alignment with my true path.
When we talk about alignment, like that is such a loaded term. I was having this conversation yesterday with someone, like what it means to live in alignment with your values, with what you actually want in life. I think the hardest part is even getting clear on what you want, like you mentioned earlier. Like just figuring out what do you want. It's like you're working from a blank canvas and it's so difficult. But when we really are in true alignment, you're exactly right. The things are flowing with ease. The synchronicities start to pop up. You start to really unfold this beautiful path, but it is hard to get to that place of alignment. And you were young. You were 23 when you moved to New York.
Yeah. Yeah.
Walk us a little bit through kind of the thought process that you took at that time when you were making that big leap of faith and you had to place trust on your inner knowing that this was going to be right for you, that you were moving in alignment with what you actually wanted. What was going on in your mind at that time?
I mean, in my mind was it was kind of knowing versus fear is what was going on because the voice for me in that moment, I mean, it was go to New York. I mean, it was just like it was so clear. There have been other moments in my life where it wasn't that clear, but in that moment, it was like the knowing is speaking. But of course, what was going through my mind was all the reasons why the knowing was crazy. And the knowing was unpredictable and unknown. And, the fear part of our brain hates the unknown because the unknown is scary and fear wants to protect us. And so, anything meaningful or novel or interesting that we want to do in our lives, that fear voice is going to get louder and louder and louder. And so it was kind of this fear versus knowing battle until I did make that decision. And then, in terms of alignment, you're speaking about like, I could, I'm sure if I looked back, be like, these are my top 5 values, and this decision is in alignment with these values. But ultimately, alignment to me is like, am I listening to and trusting myself or not? Because I can think back to, oh gosh, that person I collaborated with that I had such a strong sensation of this person is not in alignment, or this person is not in resonance, or this person is not the person you're meant to be collaborating with it. And I knew it so clear as day. But I, for whatever reason, convinced myself, oh, but it might lead to, I had the rational fear part of my brain was speaking of as to why it might be the right choice. Or, I mean, we're going to get into it, but like even my first marriage, I married a person where I knew as clear as day, walking down the aisle, I don't know how long this is going to last. Like, he's my best friend, but he's probably not my person. But that was at that time, I was too afraid to admit that to myself because of how that might disrupt my life.
That is so powerful what you just said. You were too afraid to admit it to yourself because of the fear of how it was going to disrupt your life. I think human beings are innately like we have this inner wisdom. We kind of know things like just from the get go. When it pertains to our own life, we just have this inner knowing. And so many things in life will cloud that. Someone gave me this analogy like when it's cloudy outside, it's not like the sun disappeared. There's just the clouds over it, and the clouds just need to go away so the sun can emerge. The sun is kind of like that inner knowing. So when we are faced with, like, I don't know if I'm making the right choice, this or that, or the back and forth, the indecisive, like having this indecision, it's the clouds, it's these other things, it's the shoulds, it's how we perceive the fear of how things are going to disrupt our life. But when you start to remove all of that, can you sit with the sun behind it, right? Like, can you sit with what's really there? And I just wanted to pause there because I think a lot of people who are listening will resonate with that. I know I definitely do. The fear of actually listening to myself because I'm afraid, how's this going to change my life? It's going to disrupt things I know to be true, how things are operating right now.
Yeah, and, like, and, sometimes it's like things are good. Like, they're fine, like, they're good enough. Maybe I can, like, keep staying on this train. Like, do I really, like, I'm kinda comfortable here. This feels safe in some ways. Do I really want to blow all of that up for the chance of great or extraordinary or, fully expressed or alive? And what if I don't get that? What if I make the decision, disrupt my life, and actually ends up like blowing up in my face? That was a fear of mine, and that's a common fear I hear in others who are kind of at this choice point in whatever area of their life.
This is a great segue into really the inspiration for your memoir, Loveable. And I love how it's focused really on relationships and learning how to cultivate more love for yourself. Because I think that this time period in our lives, a lot of my listeners are in their 20s and their 30s. Like, it's a very transformative time. And a lot of the worth that we put on ourselves is kind of how we see other people value us. And we place so much of our self worth in our relationships and the people that we attract. And it's so easy to get into the wrong relationships. And it's so easy to get into relationships for the wrong reasons. So I kind of want to like backtrack and start at the inception of Loveable. And I know it's inspired by this experience that you had of ending a marriage that you were in love with this person at one point in your life and then things shifted. Let's start there. Like, walk us through your journey, what inspired this memoir and the entry point into deciding that you wanted to share these experiences and the lessons that you've learned with the broader world.
Yeah, yeah. So I, 4 years ago, while married, met the person I knew I was supposed to be with. And it was, what we've been talking about knowing already. It was as clear as day, as like deep as knowing can be. Oh, that's my person. That's who I'm meant to spend my life with. And of course, that's insane. You don't know that person. You're married. You are in a business with your, like all of the fear and the voices and the people are going to judge you. And oh my God, you're a home right. Like, how could you even entertain the idea of someone else? You're married, all of the shame, all of the should, that was all very loud. But the sun behind the clouds was, I mean, and what's so funny is that how I met him, I had left New York City during the pandemic, and my ex and I, we moved to Todos Santos in Baja, Mexico, and we were building a land project. So we had found these 4 acres on the sea, and we were building this sanctuary for artists and creators and people to really disconnect to reconnect. So in this space of quiet, which is something we were experiencing ourselves, you can really hear yourself and what you create from that place of stillness, that place of quiet. And we wanted to create or it was really, a vision that I had and that I got my ex on board around. And the vision was true. It was something that was meaningful to me. But ultimately, what was also going on is that I was desperately trying to find closeness with my husband. And we had been together for 9 years and we were, great friends. We had a good time together, even like really good business associates in ways and inspiring each other and kind of supporting each other in our career paths. But like we had no romantic relationship. We didn't have a sexual relationship. And that was from the beginning. But we can be very convincing with ourselves when we want things to work. And so I convinced myself, oh, but you feel safe with him and he's your good friend. You'll figure out the intimacy eventually. Or, you'll get that closeness, eventually. And here I was thinking that if I went into business with him, I would get that closeness. So he's my business partner. He loves to work. He's always working. So maybe if I work with him, I will feel what I'm hoping to feel in this romantic relationship. And I hope I will feel the way that I imagine someone wants to feel in their marriage. And that was yet just like another attempt at trying to make it work. And so I'm in that place. And I mentioned the sun because we had just celebrated our 2-year wedding anniversary the night before this moment I'm about to share. But we had celebrated our 2-year wedding anniversary, and there's like champagne in the room, and I like pop the cork, pour 2 glasses, and then my ex like falls asleep to the voice, and I'm like, I'm literally like John Legend. As he's falling asleep, John Legend is like giving a standing ovation to the singer. And I was like, I want that. I want them. I want affection like that. I want to be seen and noticed like that. It was like my feeling in the moment. I kind of had this moment of, what the hell am I doing? How did I get here? And not even like, how did I get here? Why have I let this be okay for so long? Like, I have thought, like, I'm out in the world writing books and speaking on stages about like following your truth. Like, what the actual fuck? Like, how have I like gotten so far away from the thing that I speak as my like the thing I'm here in this world to speak about? Like, how am I so disconnected from that in love? And it was the following day, 2 people came over. They were potential investors in the project, and their friend tags along. And they arrived right as the sun was setting. And as the sun was setting and glowing on their faces, like it was, the 3 of them walked toward me. I'm seeing the sun on their faces. The entire moment slowed down for me. And I was like, why does it feel like time is slowing? And I said hello to this woman. And then I said hello to her partner. And I turned to John. And when I connected eyes with him, that's when that feeling of hello again happened. That knowing of like, oh, it's you. And so, yeah, that was the sun, and then the clouds very quickly, maybe in another life. That's crazy. Da, 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 da. So that was this life altering moment that kind of created a crossroads of, it was similar in my career. I had this crossroad moment in my career. Am I going to do the thing I think I should do and follow all of these steps that other people are going to applaud me for and think is good? Am I going to stay in this relationship where we have shared friends and everyone's going to applaud me and I have kids with him and we like build this thing? Or am I going to do the thing that is going to disrupt all of that, but that is actually true?
I mean, what a powerful like imagery that you're even describing around seeing John and being like, wait, something here feels different. It's so hard to even communicate that to people because no one knows how you're feeling. Like it's your own lived experience and it's all invisible, it's all internal. So to even be able to attempt to describe that to someone else, especially your ex at the time, I'm sure was probably incredibly, incredibly difficult. Do you think that he had any sort of hunch or awareness or idea that you were just starting to feel more and more disconnected as the years and the time passed? Or was it kind of like out of the blue, I need to end this? Like, how was that conflict?
Yeah, I mean, we were in therapy, we were doing the workshops. We were like, I don't know how you like don't have sex with your partner, like barely ever, and think that the relationship is okay. And he later reflected to me that like we were both very in the story of our relationship, but not the reality of it. And so, I think at the time, it's funny because that night when they all left, I turned to him and I said, I just met a soulmate. I didn't even mean that as like, now I'm going to blow up our marriage and go be with him. I just, in that moment, was just like, my soul knows his soul. And, it was just like a profound and deep connection was how I was relating to it in that moment. And I was like, I just met a soulmate. And he said, I know, I saw, that was beautiful to witness. So, I mean, it was like, I don't think we knew what that meant or what that was going to become or what, but it was acknowledged from the very beginning. It was John and I's connection was so palpable that it was hard not to say, like, wow, these 2 humans, like, really, there's some special energy between them.
I mean, it's undeniable the fact that he even picked up on it. And I'd love to hear kind of what a pivotal moment was for you when you had this breaking point, or rather, an inflection point in your life where you were like, this has to end. Was it that moment when you met John? Was it after that? Like, how long did things progress until you hit the point and until you had an inflection point where you said, I need to take my life in my own hands and step into the courage of doing the hard thing.
John was the wake up moment and he was the mirror because as soon as I met him, I could no longer lie to myself. I could no longer stay in the story of what our relationship was. It was like his presence all of a sudden like woke me up from a slumber. And I was like, okay, let's like be accurate about the state of our relationship and the reality of it. And so it was kind of like this domino where all of these truths that I had been repressing for the sake of staying and the sake of, the only way I could stay is to convince myself that it wasn't as bad as it was. As all of those truths started coming online, and as I, called my best friend, like, oh my God, what do I, and she was like, it sounds like you're waking up to a lot of truths and realities about that was more the like what I could no longer unknow. It was like once I knew, I couldn't unknow what I had realized. And so, yes, it was him or his presence, but ultimately, because there was a moment where, my mom asked me, she said, if it doesn't work out with John, would you stay with your ex? And I was like, no, absolutely not. I like would never go back to my ex at this point. And then she said, what the hell are you doing? Get your shit and go, because she was like, at this point, it wasn't about John or my ex-husband. It was about me. And it was about what was true for me. So, like, yes, these were people outside of me helping. People can be mirrors, wake us up to who we truly are and what we truly want. But it was that moment that, and basically had me stop lying to myself. And then once I stopped lying to myself, I just like could not. It was like it was honestly, I felt like I was like Cinderella, or like not Cinderella, Snow White, and then like, or which is the one that's like asleep and then she's Sleeping Beauty. I don't even remember.
One of those, one of the princesses. I mean, it is so true. Like once you have a moment where your consciousness is expanded and you've woken up, you cannot go back. Like once you have that awareness, you just can't go back. And it is, I found, harder to be honest with the people we love the most because there's fear of disappointing them. So how did you navigate that conversation, the series of conversations? How did you even initiate that with your ex and be truthful? Because I'm sure that there was probably fear that you held on to around saying, I don't know exactly how you phrased it to him, but essentially along the lines of, I've fallen out of love with you, out of this relationship. I can't stay here anymore. How do you even go about acknowledging that and communicating it to someone that you do hold a lot of love for, right? In that moment, you did hold a lot of love for him. How do you say those hard truths?
That was the thing that kept me there more than anything, was the fear of hurting him and letting people down and disappointing others. And it wasn't the first time him and I had had a conversation. Like there were a series of conversations over our relationship where it was like, wait, maybe this isn't. And I would be like, no, 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 no. Because what would come up for me is, oh, I feel so bad. I can't leave. I feel bad. He is good. And so I think the muscle I had to build, which I built through the experience, was recognizing that I cannot disappoint others. I will have to disappoint others. So it's not at the cost of disappointing myself. And what I had to learn to tolerate was the discomfort of other people being hurt or disappointed or upset with me. And for that to be okay, for like, he can have his feelings, or friends of ours who think I'm being reckless and crazy, they can have their feelings. They can feel however they want to feel about it. And that's okay. As someone who like wanted to be liked, or, wanted approval, or wanted, no one to be mad at me, that was a very uncomfortable position to sit with, of like, that not only are they mad at me, they're talking shit about me to people. And like, that sucks. But also, like, I know who I am, and like, that's okay.
It's also really difficult to engage in that conversation when you care so deeply about someone, but you're recognizing that for the sake of your own growth and for theirs as well, like doing them a service, you need to part ways. And it's really hard to be able to communicate that and to deliver the hard truths with love and compassion. That's really the premise of radical candor, like being open and honest and saying the hard things, but doing it all from a place of love. And there's one of two ways that the other person can receive this. They can either feel super attacked and take it incredibly personally and allow that to blow up a relationship, or over time, because of course it's going to hurt. Like these are hard conversations to have. But the other route is over time, they also, because they have so much love for you and for the other person, they recognize that they deserve to be with someone who is excited to be with them and who wants to treat them in the way that they deserve. Like it is for both parties' benefit to be in alignment with the people that are aligned with them. And, I'm curious, like, did it take time for your ex to get there? What was that like navigating that conflict immediately when you were both working through, oh God, like this is the reality now. We have to do something about it. How did you still continue to hold yourself to that standard of like acting from a place of love when you knew it was going to hurt the other person?
Our situation was very unique in that once I knew I was falling in love with John, I was very transparent about it. And my ex also was not blind. So he felt it. He and like later said to me, I was falling in love with him too in ways. Cause like, so long story short, because I was like, oh, John, I can't be with John in this lifetime. That's crazy. I'm not gonna blow up everything. I was like, oh, I'll make him my design partner in this project. So at first I like brought him in to collaborate with me on the project my ex and I were building. And the three of us actually had really powerful chemistry and like doors started opening and people wanted to like get on board. And so there was this like really actually special momentum with the three of us. And so once it was kind of named that what was happening, in some ways, my ex was like, this is actually kind of freeing for me because now like he's meeting you emotionally and now I can like go get all my work done. Like, so it was like this very like at first we're like, is there some weird utopia where like I can be with John and like I don't have to burn the house down? That was stage A of I'm not going to disappoint or hurt anyone, but it was definitely, that didn't last very long. And so we moved in stages. It was just like, but I guess the commitment the whole time was just like honest, open-hearted transparency. The chips would fall where they may. Like I didn't know what the outcome was going to be, but I knew that I was going to be honest and true in the process and communicate as compassionately as I could in that moment. Of course, I was so imperfect in so many ways and like maybe could like should I have told him sooner? Although I mean like the timeline of this was like weeks. So it was just like I'm going to say what I know is true and I don't have to be unkind, of course. And I'm just going to trust that that is going to lead us where we need to go. And my friend Erin, who is kind of my like she's one of my best friends and she was like there the entire time and she kept reminding me that liberation is a two-way street. She's like, if you are dissatisfied in the relationship, then if you're not feeling met, there's no way that he's satisfied and feeling met too. And so, as much as like I was abandoning myself, he of course had to be abandoning himself. Like we were both abandoning ourselves to be in the relationship. And so, when I liberate, I was the one to rip off the band-aid. I was the one who kind of like was like the liberating force, but that liberated him too.
Exactly. It's like, in a way, giving permission for you both to be liberated and to kind of address the elephant in the room in a way like makes it less scary once it's addressed. Like the scarier thing is to let the things go unsaid because there's the fear of disappointing other people. Once you actually just say what's on your mind, in a weird way, the fear kind of dissolves. And like one of the reasons why I love your story and even just the themes that we're talking about is because this has come up for me a lot in my own personal life, just navigating relationships, romantic and platonic. And what I've noticed for me is that it's historically been really difficult to prioritize my own needs and to be honest about wanting something different than the way things currently are operating because of the fear of either disappointing the person, making them be less interested in me, not being liked if I'm honest. And I've had to really work on rewiring my brain to, instead of like fearing the conversation because I'm afraid that the outcome will result in that person not liking me, not indexing so much on that and rather focusing on giving myself the skill sets and reps to showcasing that it's actually safe to speak my mind. Like learning how to like calm my nervous system and be like, Stella, it's okay to initiate a hard conversation. You're going to be fine. And like, you can't catastrophize this into a worst case scenario because you don't even know what the outcome is going to be like. Or rather, like, why do you care so much, Stella, about how this person perceives you if you're just speaking your mind and you're just staying true to yourself? And I think for me, a lot of it was like the fear of losing an experience with someone that drove me to just stay small and just to stay quiet. And I feel like so many women in particular really struggle with this, making themselves feel small or being afraid to express their needs and communicate their boundaries because it's like this fear of losing someone.
Losing love.
It's really tough to do, but I do believe that the more that we can practice staying true to ourselves every day and honoring that, the better you're able to create trust within yourself.
It's all about making sure our nervous system, it's like all about the nervous system and what the nervous system needs to feel safe enough. So like trusting yourself is basically just like building nervous system regulation. So meaning like back when I was walking down the aisle and I thought to myself, I don't know how long this is going to last, but at least we're going to throw a really good party. That could have been the moment. So many people are like, well, why didn't you just end it then? And it's like, because my nervous system could not tolerate telling my 70 guests who flew to Morocco that the wedding wasn't happening. And I couldn't face his family, who, I cared for and they're wonderful people, how upset they were going to be. My nervous system could not tolerate what that decision would require of me at that moment in my life. And so, we often is like, trust yourself, trust yourself. And it's like, what are the small ways you can make your nervous system feel safe? What are the small daily decisions that can actually like, oh, okay, this is trusting myself is safe. Trusting myself feels good. Taking this risk actually like paid off and was meaningful to me. And like, yeah, maybe that person's a little annoyed or upset, but I honored myself and I like myself more. Not do they like me, but I am liking myself more because I'm following through on my word. I'm speaking up when it feels scary. I'm expressing my needs. It's like we get the small reps then build into a life where we can be self honoring.
Absolutely. The small reps add up over time. And I do think that the more that you practice honoring your needs, communicating your boundaries, you're acting in ways that respect yourself because you're showing yourself, oh, what I need is valuable. It should carry as much weight as what the other person needs. That's, I think, where I've had pitfalls in the past is feeling like, okay, like this is what I need, but it's fine. I'm just not going to ask for it. And I hate to say this, but like, I really do believe that a lot of the times people fall into things that are not in alignment for them because they allow for it to happen. Like we often say, "Oh, well, I was in a situationship with this person or this person didn't respect me in this way and I was being played," and whatever the language might be. But it's like, why don't we pause in those moments and reflect on times that we didn't hold ourselves accountable to addressing things that weren't feeling good for us? Why did we allow for this behavior to keep going on and on and on? Why did we enable? How did we enable that? And oftentimes we're not even doing it consciously. Oftentimes we're doing it unconsciously because it's coming again from that place of fear. So I love that you talk about this point around nervous system regulation because you're signaling to yourself that you're safe and that you're okay and you'll be fine. I want to go back also to kind of just the inception story of how you met your ex and you were together for a long time. During that process of getting to know him and then deciding that you were going to get married and just kind of like thinking about the progression of your relationship, what at that time did you feel like really compelled you to want to be with him?
In a lot of ways, he felt familiar. I was 26 years old when we met, and he was so charming and gregarious and warm. And so part of it was that I actually like, I was like, oh, he's a safe landing place. What you were just talking about before around like accountability and all of that, and speaking needs and setting boundaries and all of that. And like what was coming up for me when you were sharing that was like the reason we don't do that is because like for me growing up, I didn't learn it was safe to have emotional needs. I learned that if I set a boundary, there would be consequences. I learned that if I told my mom how I was really feeling, that that would destabilize her, and then I would be taking care of her emotions. And so oftentimes, why is it so hard to tell this like new friend or like set a boundary with this new friend? It's not really the new friend, it's the mom who had, or the caregiver or the person from our past who had some sort of reaction or response that made us think, oh, it's not safe for me to like authentically express myself. All that to say, like, going into it with my ex, he was a good guy, and, like, initially, it was like, "Oh, wow, I actually do feel emotionally safe here." But in a lot of ways, like, his ways of being and his felt familiar and reminded me of certain people growing up, and so that familiarity was, again, something that I perceived to be as safe, and, he was a good person, but I think, with the sexual part of the relationship not being there from the very beginning, I lost my father when I was young and had a stepfather that was not a very kind person. And so my relationships and the modeling that I saw around love was that like desire is not safe. And, my mom really wanted, and called my father her soulmate, even though he left us and was abusive in many ways and abused drugs and alcohol and like was not, she would always say like, he was the great love of my life, but we were too young and dumb. And I would always be like, Mom, does the great love of your life like leave you and me? Like, does the great love of your life like have an affair and like go and not tell you where he is? Like, I'm confused by your whole idea of the great love of your life. And so, I think growing up like push down desire because desire, if I really desire this person, they will leave me. And so I think when I first met him, I got the feeling of, oh, he won't leave me. He's safe. And so I can actually relax here. I don't have to be hyper vigilant. I don't have to be monitoring. I don't have to be in my anxiety around whether or not I'm good enough. Like he feels safe. He won't leave. And so I think it was that wounding that had me stay in the dynamic and allow and like again like okay well maybe I don't want to jump his bones but again like he's not going to leave me so maybe like I'm going to prioritize not re-experiencing the pain of abandonment like that is more painful than not having the sexual relationship that was not conscious for me at the time that's like what I lots of therapy and unpacking allowed me to like because I was like, how the hell did I let that happen? And it was like, oh, all of these wounds. I was just like trying to protect myself, trying to stay safe. So that was the origins there.
Well, you know what's interesting? At that time in your life, you probably needed that entire journey to get to this awareness to bring you to someone like John. Because otherwise, do you think you would have, if you would have met John at that time, would you have felt that kind of soul connection that you described?
I mean, who knows? But I imagine I would not have felt, I imagine that I would have been so in anxiety around my enoughness and lovability and all of that that I wouldn't have been able, no, I was like not prepared to meet him yet. And in some ways, the safety of the relationship with my ex ended up being very powerful for my career because I wasn't in that anxious, like, from attachment theory perspective, anxious attachment. Like that wasn't so like present for me. Like I was just like, oh, he's safe. He's not going to leave, at least not yet, or at least not leave in the traditional sense of leaving. Because, my friends might argue, well, he wasn't really emotionally present, you know? But that allowed me to be very risk taking and bold in my career.
And I love that spin that you put on it too, because that is looking back on that time in your life still from a place of so much love and like gratitude too. I think that we have these judgments around people who get into relationships and then they break up, or like you get married and then you're divorced, and there's like a negative connotation around an ex. But at that time in your life, they likely came in at the right time to teach you something, right? And like thinking about how this person not only impacted you personally, but professionally, has opened up so much awareness to you in your life and has, in a way, helped you heal, or at least been a catalyst towards this healing journey, is so incredibly special. And I know that you talk about how the title of Lovable has this double meaning for you, knowing that you're lovable and being able to love freely. And I think that's so powerful. Can you talk a little bit more about that double meaning and how that's showing up for you in your life?
Yeah, yeah. I spelled the book Loveable, Lovable. So it's lovable, of course. And I think so much of the arc of my story and my journey was like realizing, like, oh, I am lovable and I don't need to do anything or achieve anything or be a certain way in order to be worthy and deserving of love. Like knowing that, but then also realizing that and knowing that that makes me able to love so much more. Because when I am, seeking or outward gazing or approval seeking, like if I'm showing up for someone because I want them to approve of me, that's not love coming from the truest place. That's me trying to fill a void within myself. And so when I was able to really fill that void within myself and learn what, it's like love yourself is so cliche, but it's also true. Like
Mhm, it is.
it's kind of the whole thing. The whole thing is like, how do we love ourselves? And when we can fill our own cups, we're not looking outwardly to do that. And then we have so much more love to give. And so I found that like in that self-love journey, I didn't even realize that like maybe the love I was giving was and maybe the love I was giving was loving a partner in the way that I wanted to be loved. Showing up for them and like giving them words of affirmation and quality time, but what they really want is acts of service, because it's like, well, that's what I want. So I'm going to try and meet my own needs through you. So it's interesting that when learning to love myself fully allowed me to give love more freely
That's so beautiful.
in the way that the person wants to be loved.
Exactly, because I think that that's where a lot of conflict comes into place, where you are expressing love in a way that the other person can't receive it and vice versa. And I know to your point, it sounds so cliche. Oh, love yourself first. A relationship will fall into your lap when you're not looking for it. And people will always tell me this. And I used to get so annoyed by it because I'd be like, but I already love myself. Or I'm not looking. And what I've come to realize, it's, interesting for me to be behind the mic interviewing you on this because I am single. I have not had a serious committed relationship, nowhere near close to marriage. Like I'm 25 for context. So like very different life stage for me at this age than what you were experiencing at 26, right? So what I've come to learn in more recent times as I've dated people casually and just explored and met people who have also, in a way, felt like I've had a soulmate connection with them, truly. Like, have had people come into my life that have been direct mirrors to where I've needed to grow and expand and improve my life. I'm realizing that as much as I think I love myself, there is always more to do and there's always ways to improve and there's always ways to continuously fill up your own cup. And I think one of the hardest experiences as a single woman in New York City is feeling like you need to earn love, or like the way that modern dating is set up is feeling like you need to change yourself or you need to do something different to get someone to choose you or to get someone to recognize you or to get someone to approach you or to want to be with you, right? Something that I've also come to learn is like someone can like you, but that doesn't mean that they want to be with you and invest in a relationship with you. And I used to get so hurt by that, or I'd conflate the two. And now what I've realized is that it's okay. Like someone can like you and they can also not want to be in a relationship with you. And it's up to you to decide, are you willing to tolerate that? Are you fine with that? And when we start to depersonalize these things, it's easier to move forward and to say, okay, thank you for serving up for me in this way in my life. It's not an alignment anymore, and that's okay. Like to just be okay with it, because then you realize, oh, I don't need to do anything different to be lovable. Like I can really just be myself, and the right person at the right time is going to see that and is going to want to invest in that. And I want more women who are listening to this to like really soak that in too, because we start to live out of alignment when we feel like we need to change something about ourselves to please someone else or to make them feel like they should pick us. It doesn't really help us out in the end of the day.
No, absolutely not. And I love what you said there. It's like the key I found is the depersonalization. This is not about me. Like as soon as we can not take it personally, I feel like that is like one of the greatest tickets to freedom.
Yes. And when we live from a place of freedom and we feel free, we are just naturally happier, or rather, we can face the challenge and the adversity from a place of knowing that we'll be okay on the other end. And it's easier to be more receptive to joy. I believe that to be true. I would love to hear from you, Amber, as we kind of shift gears a little to more so the theme of this podcast, which is all about happiness and joy and finding things in life that bring you endorphins. You have such a powerful story, and I can't wait for your book to come out in August. By the time we release this interview, it will be out for the world to read. I can't wait for that day to come. But I would love to hear from you how this experience in your life has made you rethink what it means to be happy.
I think happiness before for me was really outward gazing. It was about achievement, about success, about doing the next thing, checking the next box, making things happen, being well received, being applauded. It was all like I was just like looking outward. Likes on a post, it was, oh, I made a series of illustrations that went viral. Like I was deriving happiness from what I was achieving. And I mean, even I'm now the mother of an 8-month-old who's like napping in the next door and woke up at one point in this nap and my husband got him back down. But like happiness now is like not at all about what's happening out there. It's so much more about what's happening in here. And it's about like, do I feel peace in my days? Do I get to spend time with the people that I love? Do I find joy in how I get to spend my time? It's much more simple. It's like, it's not about a result, really. It's about the small, simple practices that really the process and the journey and being able to find peace and peace in the everyday.
Prioritizing inner peace, I think, is so important. And the irony is that you actually get to more peace, inner peace, when you gather the courage to do the hard things. Like you kind of have to do the hard things to prioritize your peace, which is ironic because you feel like, oh, let me just do the thing that brings me the immediate gratification. That's going to give me more peace immediately. That's not sustainable at all based off of everything we've been talking about this afternoon. I also really resonate with your response. Right before we hopped on to do this interview, I was recording a TikTok and I was reflecting on how when I was in high school I had these like limiting beliefs that I didn't feel smart enough. And that all came from comparing myself to my peers. And so I didn't realize like the comparison mindset that I held so deeply when I was like 15 has transcended now 10 years later and has held me back from doing things from a place of accessing my full potential. And that was so focused on being like achievement oriented and outcome oriented. And that wasn't really ever making me happy, but that's the way we are, for better or for worse, socialized, I think. So many of us. And not to say there's anything, wrong with that, but it's about developing like a healthier relationship to your ambition and redefining what success means to you. And then seeing how happiness interplays with all of it, I think is so fascinating. So I absolutely resonated with your response. And I would love to hear, just as a follow on question to that, what are some strategies that you would offer my listeners to prioritizing inner peace? Like, what are some practices or habits that you've implemented that has helped you stay grounded in that and focus on creating peace in your day to day?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is to choose yourself first in the morning. This is a little hard for me now that I'm a mama of an 8-month-old because the first thing is nursing. Even after this moment, when I finally, I have a moment to myself in the day. How do I want to spend that time? So have the first thing that you do in the day be something that really energizes and enlivens you. This used to before look like I would write before anything else, before I checked email, before I went on social media, before I allowed the inputs in the world to come into my orbit. I would pull out my journal and I would write. And that would just like get everything going for me. Now it's a walk in the morning with my husband and son. Like we do our morning walk, we get our morning coffee, and it is like the highlight of my day. I love it. It brings me joy. It clears my mind. It's funny. It's like a similar, I'm not putting pen to paper, but it is clearing my mind and getting ideas going for me. Yeah, just choose yourself first each day, I'd say would be the first thing. in terms of cultivating inner peace. The second way to cultivate inner peace would be to recognize the things that are taking away from your peace and addressing those. This is a, more uncomfortable one, but it can be so opening. So my husband and I, we just left LA. We were pushed out by the fires. Our house didn't burn down, but it got to the edge of our neighborhood. And we left because, at that point our son was 3 months old and just air quality, I wasn't willing to take any risks. We moved our stuff across the country, and it turned out that we don't know exactly the how or the why, but there's mold on all of our stuff. And when here we are in a fresh apartment in New York, everything reeked of mold. And we had this moment of like, okay, let's try and save everything. Let's wash everything. Let's take it to the dry cleaners. It's like, how do we keep all of our stuff? Like, oh my God, we've had these things for so long. All this artwork, my entire wardrobe. And ultimately, it was taking away from our peace. It was making us insane. We'd like walk in rooms and I started breaking out in rashes and I was having respiratory symptoms. My like husband had already dealt with mold poisoning in his life, was having like all these symptoms come back up. And finally, like the very difficult but peaceful decision was to throw away everything that we owned. And like that's like an extreme example of what was taking away our peace. Sometimes what's taking away our peace is like not setting a boundary or not speaking up or not expressing a need. Sometimes it's throwing away everything that you own.
Yeah. Something I like to think about is the like addition by subtraction rule. Sometimes you really need to clear space for new things to come in, which means you need to get rid of what you currently have, whether that is letting go of holding on to relationships or a job, whatever it could be for you. I mean, I recently moved apartments and I was like, I need to clear out my closet and genuinely use this as a mental shift to then figure out how do I curate pieces that make me feel good. Like, I don't want to just go shopping and buy things that I don't need. Let me get rid of the things I actually don't wear so that I can create space for putting in things that like light me up. So it's a similar logic, but obviously a different situation. And your example is definitely very extreme. So I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm happy to hear that you really are on like a fresh new page in life now.
Thank you. Thank you. That leads me to my third way of cultivating inner peace, which is discernment. And I literally have, going with the clothing and stuff metaphor, I have 4 dresses hanging in my closet right now. And I fucking love those 4 dresses. Thinking of Marie Kondo, does it spark joy? Those 4 dresses spark joy. And so it's being really intentional about the choices that we make and having discernment around, does this feel aligned? Does this feel meaningful? Does this spark joy? Is this going to allow me to be more of me? I think that daily discernment can create a great sense of peace and joy and happiness in our lives.
Well, that's a beautiful transition into the final question that I have for you, which is a question that I ask every single guest on the show. And it's all about finding the things in life that make us happy. And I truly agree with you. We need discernment and intentionality with creating an environment, a routine that really lights us up and fills up our cup. So I would love to hear from you, Amber. What is something that brings you a bit of endorphins every day?
What brings me endorphins is walks, going on these walks and just being outside. I'm back in New York City and being in the bustle of the city, and I'm living in Greenpoint, and just being immersed in the neighborhood is just lighting me up in this really profound way. We were living in LA, but we were living in Topanga Canyon, which is super isolated, and it's gorgeous nature and gorgeous canyons, but it was actually intensely isolating with a baby. I couldn't walk to a cafe. So like on Thursday nights, the local wine spot has free wine tastings. And I like put my son in my carrier and I like go in and we like taste wine and everything. He's meeting people in the neighborhood and we go on these morning coffee walks and it's, I guess what's giving me endorphins is like being back in a vibrant place that is walkable, that I can like engage with the world. And through engaging with the world, my son gets to engage with me. And it's where we have these like fantastical adventures every day. And just like experiencing the way the world sees him and reflects him back. He's like such a smiley, he's just like, he loves the world and he loves people. And so being able to see the world through his eyes is like really profound and meaningful and is definitely giving me endorphins.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I mean, talk about a culture shock from Topanga Canyon to Greenpoint. Like, truly, that is couldn't be more opposite. But I've driven through Topanga and it's gorgeous, but I could imagine it feeling a bit isolating. I mean, I grew up in New York, so all I know is the hustle and bustle of New York City. And it's funny you mentioned that you're going to these like wine tastings and you're bringing your son and you're vibing and you're spending quality time because my mom always said like she took me everywhere as a kid. I'm an only child and when I was little, my parents would go out for drinks and I'd sit at the bar with them. I wasn't drinking alcohol as a kid, but they didn't want to leave me at home and they loved that New York City was a place where you could do that with a child and you could bring them out and socialize them in that way. And I know it brought them a lot of personal meaning and joy. So I can kind of, I'm thinking about them as I'm hearing your response because I see there to be interconnectivities. And I just think that's such a beautiful way to now experience the world through your son's eyes and how that is probably just such a deeply gratifying part of your life now and chapter that you're in the midst of. So I love that. And now it's the summer and it's beautiful weather and there's so many amazing walks to take in Greenpoint and all around New York City. So maybe I'll run into you on one of the New York City streets. But Amber, truly it was such a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for your time and for your vulnerability and insight. And I do believe that, everyone who's listening, like there is just so much to take from this interview and to think about how to apply these lessons into your own life, like how to gather the courage to say the hard truths, to deliver these hard truths from a place of compassion and love, and what it means to really prioritize yourself. So I know I learned a lot, and now my listeners get to grab a copy of your book. So this leads me to really my final question. Where can everyone connect with you and read Loveable and just follow along in your orbit?
Yeah, so Loveable is available wherever books are sold. And you can follow me on Instagram. I'm Hey Amber Ray, and amberray.com is my website, which will link to all the things as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
And this was so fun. Thank you. You asked great questions.